It started with a simple word, stepdad, but those 5 letters would come to mean more than I ever expected. They would shape my entire view of family, love, and myself. I didn't ask for a stepdad, but life doesn't always give us what we ask for, does it? The first time I heard the word stepdad, I almost couldn't believe it. My mom had always been my rock. We were a team, just the two of us. But then she met him, Mark, and everything started to change. At first, I thought it was just a phase, a temporary distraction, but I quickly learned that this man was not going anywhere. I didn't know it at the time, but this man was going to change my life. It was a Saturday afternoon when I first met Mark. My mom had invited him over for dinner, and I remember feeling an overwhelming sense of unease. I had heard her talk about him, but that didn't prepare me for seeing him in person. He wasn't like anyone I had expected. He wasn't the cool, fun dad type. He wasn't my biological father. And for some reason that made me feel rejected. "Hi, I'm Mark," he said with a smile, as if everything was normal. I remember just nodding, not knowing what to say, not even sure if I wanted to say anything, but my mom looked so happy. That was the first clue that maybe I should at least give him a chance. After all, this wasn't his fault. He was just trying to get to know us. And my mom, she deserved to be happy. But inside, I couldn't shake the thought. This man is going to change everything. As the weeks passed, I started to notice the cracks in our new family. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe I was just overreacting. After all, he was my mom's choice. But there were moments when he'd say something that rubbed me the wrong way. Sometimes his ideas about discipline felt so foreign. He wasn't my dad, and I didn't want him to be. One night, after an argument with my mom about something silly, I can't even remember what now, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Mark. I could feel the tension in the air like a thick fog. I wasn't sure if I was more angry at him for trying to step in or at myself for resenting him for it. He looked at me, his face full of patience, and said, "I know you're not happy about me being here, but I'm not trying to replace your father." I could feel my heart racing. His words were kind, but I didn't believe him. How could I? I was torn between wanting to respect my mom's choice and feeling like I had to defend the memory of my dad. Why did she need someone else? Why couldn't it just be the two of us? But the more time we spent together, the more I realized something. Mark wasn't trying to be my dad. He wasn't trying to take anyone's place, but that didn't stop the walls I built around myself from growing higher. It was a random Tuesday when everything changed. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the way Mark had stepped in when I was struggling with schoolwork, or maybe it was the way he listened to me when I had a bad day. But one night, after another one of our quiet dinners, I sat down with him. I don't even know what I said, but the words just came out. "I'm sorry," I said. "I've been really hard on you." He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me with those calm eyes of his, as if he'd been waiting for me to finally open up. "I just don't know how to feel about all of this," I continued. "I'm trying, but it's hard. You're not my dad." And then he said something that I will never forget. "I never expected to replace him. I just wanted to be here for you and your mom. I wanted to be a part of your lives without trying to erase anything from the past." That was it. That simple sentence cracked open the wall I had built between us. After that night, things started to feel different. Our relationship didn't magically change overnight, but I started to see Mark through a different lens. It wasn't about him trying to be my father. It was about him wanting to be there for me in the best way he knew how. Slowly, we began to talk more, to share stories, to laugh. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, of silence, but they became fewer and fewer. And the truth was, I wasn't so scared anymore. My mom had found someone who made her happy, and in turn, I started to understand that I could be okay with this new version of family. Looking back, I can say that my relationship with Mark has been one of the most unexpected and important parts of my life. It wasn't always easy. We both had to grow, to learn from each other. But in the end, it was about finding a way to move forward, together. I still don't know if I ever fully replaced my father, but what I do know is this. Mark became a part of my life in a way I didn't expect. And sometimes the relationships we fight the hardest are the ones that teach us the most about love, family, and ourselves. The days that followed that conversation with Mark were filled with a new kind of quiet tension, but not the kind we had before. It wasn't the kind where I felt like we were strangers in the same house, avoiding each other's eyes. This was different. There was a subtle shift in the way we coexisted. He didn't push me, but I could tell he was trying to show me that he was here to stay, not to replace anyone. One evening, a few weeks after that conversation, I found myself in the living room, flipping through a magazine with my mom as Mark sat on the couch beside us, reading the newspaper. The silence felt oddly comfortable. My mom glanced at me and smiled, a soft, knowing look in her eyes. "Everything okay?" she asked, not needing to clarify further. She had always been able to read me, especially when I wasn't quite sure about myself. I nodded, feeling an odd sense of peace I hadn't expected. Maybe this is what family is supposed to feel like, I thought. Maybe this is what it's like when you let go of the past and let yourself move forward. Mark looked up from his newspaper and caught my eye. For a moment, I thought he might say something, but he didn't. Instead, he just smiled, that warm, unassuming smile of his, and I realized something. It wasn't always going to be perfect, but maybe it didn't need to be. Over the months that followed, I started to notice how much my relationship with Mark had evolved. It was subtle, but undeniable. What had once been an uncomfortable dynamic filled with resistance had turned into something that felt natural. Mark wasn't just my mom's husband anymore. He wasn't just a stepdad. He had become someone I could rely on, someone I trusted, even if I didn't always understand everything he did or said. But I had started to see him in a new light, not through the lens of rejection or fear, but as someone who genuinely cared. One afternoon, as I was struggling with a math assignment, Mark offered to help me. "You're good at this stuff," he said, sitting down next to me at the kitchen table. "Just take it one step at a time." I hesitated, unsure if I should accept his help. After all, he wasn't my dad. Wouldn't that make it weird? But then I realized that he had been there, in small ways, for months now. He didn't have to be my father to show me he cared. In that moment, I saw Mark as a figure in my life who had no hidden agenda. He just wanted to help. We spent the next hour going through my homework, laughing when I made silly mistakes, and slowly but surely I finished it. It was one of those small moments that made all the difference. That sense of peace we had found was tested one night when we had a big family dinner. The air was filled with laughter and conversation, and I felt something I hadn't expected: contentment. There was something so normal about it. Mark joking with my mom, me teasing him back, and us all sitting together as a family. But then, out of nowhere, something happened that shook me to my core. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I took it out to check. It was a message from my best friend, Jenny. "Are you okay? I heard your mom married Mark. Are you still okay with it?" I froze, feeling that old tension rising up in my chest again. Did people think I wasn't okay with it? Did people still think it was weird? I quickly typed back a response, trying to convince myself as much as her. "I'm fine. Things are good. I'm figuring it out." But the truth was, I wasn't so sure anymore. How could things be good when I still had moments where I doubted everything? Why had I let myself be so vulnerable? I put my phone back in my pocket, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that maybe I was fooling myself. The doubts started to creep in again. That night after dinner, I found myself sitting alone on the porch, staring out into the quiet night. Mark came out a few minutes later, a bottle of water in his hand. He paused when he saw me sitting there. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft but serious. I shook my head, not sure how to explain. "I'm just not sure if I'm okay with everything. It feels like sometimes it's too much. Too much change, too fast." He sat down beside me, not saying anything at first. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable though. It was calm, understanding. Finally, he spoke again. "Change is hard, especially when it feels like it's being forced on you. But I'm not here to rush you or to pressure you. I'm here to be part of your life in whatever way makes sense for you." His words hit me hard. He wasn't trying to force anything on me. He wasn't pushing me to be his daughter or to accept him in a way that felt unnatural. He was just here, showing up day after day, doing what he could to make our family better. I think I'm starting to get it," I said quietly, looking up at the stars above us. "Yeah?" he asked, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Yeah," I whispered. "You're not just my mom's husband. You're becoming someone I can count on." I didn't expect that, but I'm starting to see it. Mark smiled, and I saw in his eyes something I hadn't fully recognized before. Love, pure and simple. Not the kind that demanded anything, but the kind that was just there. In the quiet moments, in the way he looked out for me. The journey wasn't easy, it wasn't linear. There were still moments of doubt, moments when I would remember what life was like before Mark entered the picture, but those moments became fewer as time passed, replaced by a growing sense of acceptance, not just for him, but for myself. Mark and I started spending more time together, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. We went on walks, talked about life, and shared things about our pasts. He opened up about his own experiences, his childhood, and the challenges he had faced. In turn, I shared more about mine. It became clear to me that this wasn't just about family in the traditional sense. It was about finding new ways to connect, to build trust, and to build love from the ground up. We were creating something new together. One day, a few months later, I looked at Mark across the dinner table, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't expected. It wasn't just acceptance, it was gratitude. Thank you, I thought. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for being here. And in that moment, I realized how much my relationship with Mark had changed my life, not just by bringing him into our home, but by teaching me how to embrace change, how to forgive, and how to allow love to grow in unexpected places. Today, when I look at Mark, I see more than just the man who married my mom. I see someone who played an essential role in my life, someone who has taught me the value of patience, kindness, and resilience. The person I once feared is now someone I'm thankful for. Family doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it's messy, and sometimes it's complicated. But if we open our hearts to it, we may just find that it's exactly what we need to become who we're meant to be. And for me, it's not just about accepting a new family member. It's about accepting myself, my past, and the journey that got me here. My relationship with Mark didn't just change my life. It made me see that change, even when it feels impossible, can be one of the most beautiful things that happens to us.